like you to join me in welcoming to the stage here James Clark, Sales Director, EMEA and APAC for AMAG Technology, on his presentation, Systems Integrators or Security Integrators, the Inflection Point in our Industry. So please join me in welcoming James to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. As John said, my name is James Clark. It's my absolute pleasure to be here today to represent AMAG Technology. I think at AMAG, we consider this incredible industry that we're in to be at an inflection point. I think this was summarized really effectively by Leo Dess when he said, effectively, the next 30 years has little to do with the past 30 years. Digital transformation selectively keeps old truths while introducing more new ones. Ultimately, we believe that those who embrace the change will reap exponential benefits. Those who resist do so at significant risk to themselves. Ultimately, this provides us, and this context provides us with an understanding that consultants, manufacturers, integrators, end users ultimately need to behave differently in the future. They can no longer behave the way that we have historically in the past. And it's also important to recognize that the concept of security integrators, in my opinion and the opinion of AMAG Technology, is slightly outdated. The concept we need to talk about is systems integrators. Ultimately, we are all systems integrators in what we do. I did a systems engineering degree 30 years ago. And on the very first day in class, they put this slide up. And I apologize for the simplicity of it, but ultimately it reminds us that a system is a set of interrelated components and resources that work together. They can be physical, they can be human, and they're in a particular environment and they perform whatever functions are required to achieve the system's objectives. Okay? And often, the stakeholders involved in that process have a different opinion about what the ultimate objective of that exercise is. As I say, at AMAG Technology, we believe that our amazing industry is an inflection point. In order to adapt and grow, we need to think more holistically. And as I was taught 30 years ago, there's an incredible toolkit associated with systems theory. On the screen here, what you can see is a number of those examples of systems thinking. There are many, many more that we will see and we will talk about in the future. But what I'd like to do is just try and walk you through some of the dynamics of systems theory that help us think about how we embrace the inflection point and how we all exponentially grow over the coming years. How often do we see this? I work within a manufacturing environment now, but previously I was working as a systems integrator. How often do we see this dynamic of a linear workflow, where it flows through end user to consultant to integrator to manufacturer, and it kind of never deviates? There is often this passionate desire to own the end user relationship, to protect people from that kind of environment. As an industry, we need to change our mindset and move from a linear model to the systems theory that talks about the circular model. You never come off the wheel. You ultimately, the challenge that we face today is different to the challenge we'll face tomorrow. And ultimately, unless you continue to circle around that, you'll never really understand what the challenge really is today and what it will be in a year's time or 5 years' time. This might be obvious, and I heard people earlier today talk about this topic. In this world, everything is interconnected. Okay? It's important to remember that there's also interconnectivity around the ambitions and goals of the stakeholders. Often we see in the security world in which we operate, the image on the left-hand side, the disconnection, stakeholders sitting somehow at arm's length from each other. At AMAG Technology, we recognize the interconnectedness is the most important thing that exists in the world. Okay? The problem with interconnectivity is it creates complexity. Okay? And ultimately, the complexity that's created either because of the number of stakeholders, or because of the technology, or because of the innovation, or because of the ambition, leads to people restraining their ambition. Okay? Ultimately, because of stakeholder reticence, they're frightened of that complexity. In this world where we talk about disconnected individuals or disconnected stakeholders, you ultimately have isolation. Okay? The only way you fix isolation is through collaboration and partnership. Okay? For those of you who ever spend any time with either me or my team, what you hear us talk about is an outside-in mentality. All too often in the past, manufacturers sit and push product to the market. Look how cool this is. What we're now doing is actually coming to the outside and working back. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And working with all the stakeholders to collaborate and partner with no issue around trust in order to resolve those complexities and ultimately deliver solutions that are effective today and will be effective in 10 years' time. Synthesis, this was one of the most interesting topics, I suppose, 30 years for me. Often what we do in the security industry, we take individual data points that you see on the left-hand side and we analyze them. But we analyze them not as a collective. We analyze them in individuals, sometimes maybe a couple of people. We think about workflows, but ultimately what you're really striving for is synthesis. One of the key principles of systems theory is synthesis. And it really talks about the art of combining two things to create something new. Simple principle, but very difficult to do in reality. Again, recurring theme, but collaboration and true collaboration enables the transition from analysis to synthesis, and then ultimately the subsequent removal of complexity. But put in another way, it's effectively about improving operational efficiency and task automation. Ultimately, everything we are trying to do is designed to streamline that process. Look at the workflow. How can we make it better tomorrow? How do we drive operational efficiency? But don't just fix it for today. Have the foresight to see what does that look like in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time? And how do we build resilience into the design of the system that enables you to adapt as technology and innovation comes through the pipeline? Ultimately, synthesis is not about simply the parts. It's about understanding the whole and the parts at the same time. I think someone in the last panel talked about breaking down silos. We've heard this, I've heard this my entire career. But again, systems theory and the principle of being a systems integrator rather than a security integrator enables you to embrace the concept of emergence. It's basically the natural outcome of collaboration, and it forces you to break down silos. Now, we can consider silos inside our own organizations, or we can consider silos inside the security industry in which we operate. We break down those silos, and ultimately what we're able to do is create larger things from smaller parts. Systems theory has got so many models like this. Everyone in this room is effectively a systems integrator. We all are. The opportunity is for us to embrace systems theory and take the opportunity the inflection point in our industry is presenting us with and drive exponential growth for ourselves, our partners, our end users, and ultimately the industry as a whole. So, at AMAG Technology, we believe that ultimately our future success is predicated on the existence of collaboration and partnership across the value chain. It's simple, but that has to come with trust, that has to come with openness, and that has to come ultimately with a desire to solve problems for the people who need those problem solving. We have to remove this cultural need to own the end user relationships. Because sometimes it's important for that end user to talk to a manufacturer direct. Sometimes it's important for the consultants, the manufacturer, the integrator to be in a room with our customers in order to manage that more effectively. Ultimately, I started learning about this 30 years ago, but I believe if you embrace the concept that everyone in this room is a systems integrator, rather than some of us in this room are security integrators or think that's what we are, you understand that the emergence of systems thinking helps stakeholders to not only define their current needs, but ultimately safeguard their future needs at the same time. So if we go back to what Leo Des said, we all can embrace the next 30 years rather than pull forward what we've learned over the last 30 years. My pleasure to be here today representing AMAG Technology. I would love to continue the conversation on collaboration and partnership if you have the time in the breaks. I hope everyone has an amazing day. Thank you very much.